Okay, District B, you're the incumbent. You want to go first or second?
Second.
Okay, Steve Halvorson.
Hello, thanks for having me today. I'm Steve Halvorson, District B, running for a first-time election. And I've lived in Pasadena for 19 years with my wife, Jennifer Halvorson, and she's a lifelong resident of Pasadena. So she grew up here, and we moved into the neighborhood. I moved from Galveston. I was a research scientist in Galveston, and I met her. She met me in Galveston. I came down here to visit with her, and we ended up getting married later on. So I ended up living in Pasadena. I really enjoy Pasadena. I like the area a lot. I have a son from previous marriage. His name's Ryan Halvorson, and he's out at University of Houston working on his construction technology degree. I used to be an Army engineer. My degree is biology, so I had a split I had science and engineering background. So I encouraged my son to go into engineering so he could have a bright future. He's tried civil, now he's gone to construction technology. So I'm happy to see that he's got an internship now at one of the local construction firms. So that's a great experience for me. Like I said, I'm a 15-year veteran of the United States Army. I served in Germany, and I served also in Bosnia. I was called up, they had a conflict over there, and I was called up during the Serbian conflict to serve as well over there. I'm a laboratory director currently at Baylor College of Medicine. I have a total of 27 years in research science, and I have about 10 peer-reviewed articles. It's not much for folks that don't get into science. I'm kind of a nerd, but I've participated in 10 projects that were actually published research projects. I've also worked 10 years in community organizing. Some folks may know me and see me. I've gotten up with some activist groups in the area. We mostly bring issues to the community and to the city that are problems in our area. And as you know, in the north side, we have a little bit of a crumbling infrastructure. So my focus has been to look at flooding issues was one of my focuses. Also, the roads and streets and sidewalks have been a problem. So my wife and I both kind of worked in the community. I got Frinfrock Ditch cleaned out. We had some flooding issues. We brought it to the attention of the city council. The city council actually took notice. They cleaned the ditch out. They put a new concrete barrier. It doesn't flood anymore. I mean, we still have high water here and there, but it doesn't flood nearly as badly as it did before the ditch was repaired. Also, we had some sidewalk repairs, and some of the heavy equipment came down, up and down the street, and tore up our old road. It was an asphalt road. So my wife and I, we got together, took pictures in our neighborhood. She got up and spoke, and we were able to get with the work with the civil engineers here to get the road repaired with concrete. Now, when that happened, we had neighbors starting to fix up their houses. And so I guess when they see that we're taking and placing our money where we should be putting it into the city, the neighbors also get encouraged to repair their homes as well.
Okay.
So we had a couple vacant homes.
Time's up.
Okay. If you have any
So
questions?
I guess you are a rocket scientist, right? I guess for all practical purposes.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Not quite, but yes.
As far as your vision for the police department, what do you see? What do you want to see the police department do to help your district?
Okay, well, I know that in District B, there is a community impact officer for parts of B around the, I think the La Queens area. We're in one of the underserved areas a little bit further north of that area. I'm kind of on the borderline with A. Well, we don't have an impact officer in our area. I'd like to see maybe some expansion of community policing in our area. And it's been good. When I first came, there was a lot of police officers would come through the area, kind of drive around and kind of, talk to the neighbors. I think I was walking in the street, told me to walk on the sidewalk. But I missed that because we don't see that as often anymore. When I'm walking around, I don't see police officers as much on the weekends. And I think maybe funding for fuel and things like that, and also staffing may be one of the issues. And another issue that was brought up by the District A folks is there is an issue with language barrier and also with trust within the community. My community, when I'm block walking, a lot of them speak Spanish, so I'm having to get some assistance with translating even myself to be able to communicate, in Spanish and in English to folks that need a little bit of translation. And also, like we were talking about speeding and stuff like that, you can get that. I think you've had that. You put that speed indicator out for in different neighborhoods. We can have that brought in and check whether people are speeding in the neighborhoods. I've also, when I'm block walking, people have asked for speed bumps. I know those are good and bad in certain situations. If it's a high avenue road and emergency vehicles have to get in, you may not be able to put a speed bump in, but in other areas where we've actually had problems, we can possibly look at that too. That's some of the things I'd like to look at.
Okay, David.
I'll pass.
Yes, sir. I was with Community Services for a while, and yourself and the other gentlemen that are interested in District A have spoken about us and our contact with the Hispanic community.
Yes, sir.
Where we've scheduled events and we show up and there's one person or myself and just the coordinator, and we give that opportunity to the people in the community to come out and ask us questions, to give us feedback. But this is the kind of turnout that I've seen personally. So what would you suggest we do to improve that relationship, to improve the communication with the people in our community?
Well, for example, my wife and I, we attempted to do a neighborhood network. We actually have one on the books, but it's been inactive for a while in the Sunset neighborhood area. I'd like to reinvigorate that plan, there's a Sunset neighborhood park, is Fogo Park. If we can get the Parks Department to open that up, and what my wife and I were doing for a period of time is we were putting letters in the mailbox to everybody. And it was it's pretty labor intensive to go in the neighborhood and give those flyers out. But once you get a community following of folks, they start to trust you. And then we start inviting folks in to come to our meeting. And we were doing it both in Spanish and in English, so we were translating those. And we had a pretty good following for a good time. The problem with the north side, the funding is low. So we need to get a little bit more. We can't force folks to give to us. We have to start, getting some donations. I was putting some money, finally at the very end, I was putting a lot of money in my own pocket. I don't make that much money as a research scientist, don't make a lot, but on one Halloween, we were doing Easter egg hunts and a bunch of stuff in our neighborhood. And finally I was paying out of my pocket, and I said, well, I just can't do this anymore. This is getting to be a little rough in my pocketbook. But I think we need to look at that again. And when I get into office, I'll have a little bit more influence to be able to change those sorts of things.
In your years working within the community, what have you seen as the major crime problem within your area?
Crime problems of break-ins of vehicles a lot of times, and pilfering, stuff taken out of people's front yards. And I believe that there was something discussed about people not reporting crime more because of the undocumented workers in the area. So some of the folks feel like they can just go into somebody's house and break into it because they're not going to report it. So that's another issue that we have too. So I've seen that in my neighborhood. I've actually had my car broken into a couple times in this area. So somebody took a little battery pack out of my car once, and busted the window out, so I had to repair that. So I reported that one.
Obviously, you're dissatisfied with the current councilman in that district. What would you do better, or what criticisms do you have of him as far as what you do better?
What would I do better? I think we need to expand. The biggest issue, and it's really citywide, it's inequities across the board on how we share resources. And a lot of people have this south side, north side thing. I don't really think we should talk about it in that manner. We should say equitable tax bases across the board. A lot of times there's, a little bit of gifting going on to certain neighborhoods and people that, participate, and other areas of the city are kind of left behind. I've been walking in the corners around the center part of Queens. Looks really nice. There's a lot of infrastructure improvements in the council area district, but when you expand away from that, it's kind of left behind. And I'd like to see infrastructure improvements extended to the entire District B, but I'd also like to extend that to the north side of Pasadena, A, B, C, D. If you go south of Spencer, you see a different world than you see north of Spencer. So those are where I would like to see improvements. And talking particularly offensively about anyone, I don't really feel that's, productive, so.
You talked about staffing earlier, about possibly getting more officers on the street. What would you do to entice more people to come to this department? What ideas would you have there as far as either benefits or?
Well, we get about, 250 people on the police force, plus or
Yes,
minus?
there's a 258.
258. So, well, we definitely need to keep the police force at 250 to 258. I understand you got a police academy, and sometimes there's turnover, retirees versus trying to keep the force at, at 250. I'd like to see I don't know if there's funding available to get more time for folks to go into the north side areas, particularly for our area, to just do courtesy patrols more often. I know I can call for one, and my wife and I both have called for them, and you guys come. I mean, there's no problem with anybody coming out. I've called for problems with loud noises, and you guys come. It's no problem. But maybe some unannounced calls just to go driving through the neighborhoods once in a while. And I mean, I can point out areas that need some concerns. A lot of times what happens on the weekends is, and you probably already know this, is loud noise. People are having their parties and stuff. And people need to party and have good times and stuff like that, but sometimes it become abusive for folks that are trying to rest, and they get out of control. And sometimes I'm in there calling myself, and I feel frustrated because if I call, then I got a guy who's probably going to puncture my tire or do some vandalism to my home. So I like to not do that as often and maybe have it just done kind of impromptu or just drive through the neighborhood. And if you drive through the neighborhood, a lot of times they'll turn the music down already. You don't even have to talk to them. There's just more of a presence in the neighborhood. So,
Do you have any idea how many officers are assigned to your district on an average day?
no, sir, I don't know. I mean, I know that on the weekends I don't see them very often in my district. When we call, they do come. I mean,
Yes, sir.
we're not forgotten completely, but it seems like on the weekends it's a little bit less than it had been in the past. When I got here 20 years ago, there was a lot more police presence. And of course, we've gone through some financial rough times, I think, on gasoline, petroleum. That affects everybody's budget. So how can you drive all over town with fuel costs rising? So I'd like to see maybe a little bit more of a budget going to your department in order to be able to do those kinds of services. You got to have some money financing to do those things. So that's what I'd like to see.
Thank you.
I would
Yes,
have
sir. Yes, sir.
some information, I guess, you mentioned about you don't see as many officers. Let me expound on what I think is, and I'll just go back to the year 2010, when we had a total of 282 police officers. With those 282 police officers in the year 2010, we responded to 76,987 calls for service. Today, we have 258 police officers, obviously less. And in 2016, we responded to 113,295 calls for service. It's a 47% increase in 7 years with less police officers.
Less resources.
And I don't think the problem's been with funding for police officers. I think what it relies, and everybody will probably agree, it's in the recruitment process. And we need to somehow, I guess, think outside the box and recruit to get more officers to come to the Pasadena Police Department. That may explain why you're not seeing, we're out there, believe me, we're out there. And I would encourage you to get with one of the patrol supervisors on any shift you'd like and do a ride-along. We'll take you around your district and you can see for yourself what happens. And that's what I wanted to add here about why you don't see as many cops today as you probably saw yesterday. So,
Okay. Okay, no problem.
all right. Thank you, sir.
No, thank you. Appreciate it.